is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with David Vulcano, an executive and angel investor deeply embedded in the Nashville ecosystem. By day, he serves as vice president for clinical research compliance and integrity at HCA Healthcare, helping one of the largest healthcare systems in the world navigate the complexity of clinical research, ethics, and regulatory compliance across hospitals, physician practices, and health tech partners. He's also honorary president for the Society for Clinical Research Sites and has held leadership roles on numerous boards and committees tied to clinical data and research, which has made him a widely recognized voice in how clinical trials are designed, run, and governed. He's also president of the Music City Angels. David, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Hall. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Great. So where are you calling from?
All right, here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, great. Well, let's talk about the Music City Angels and its role in the Nashville and Southeast startup ecosystem. What role do you see it playing?
Well, Music City Angels has been around for a little over 15 years or so. It started its journey called Angel Capital Group. And after COVID, they had some joint ventures that started and dissolved. And right after COVID, they did a rebranding for it. So Music City Angels is the Nashville chapter for a larger angel syndicate called Community Equity Partners. Most of the staff of Community Equity Partners is based out of Knoxville. But we have a chapter here in Nashville, Music City Angels. There's a chapter in Knoxville called the Marble City Angels, a chapter in Memphis called the Blue City Angels, and some other regional chapters around. We are the angel groups. We manage angel funds as well as an angel club. The difference, the fund, are your typical, venture 2 and 20 type funds. And the club model is a little bit more relaxed. It's, you see the pitches, you pass the hat, and you see who wants to go in onto the particular deal. So we are typically among the first money in on companies, first startups, and that's kind of where we fit. We're not isolated to only Nashville-based deals. We do deals from all over the country. But of course, there are some benefits of doing it right here in Tennessee.
So how does Music City Angels evaluate early stage investment opportunities and select founders? What's your criteria and what are you looking for?
Yeah, so typically we like to see, and typically, as you know, Hall, the typical deal is like 30%, right? So, but typically we want to see at least an MVP developed on this. We don't fund R&D, we don't fund science projects and things along those lines. So, we fund the businesses behind them. So typically we like to see a lot of that done already to an MVP. And normally, as I mentioned before, along the continuum, we're among the first money in right after friends and family in these particular companies. We have seen a little bit later stage deals all the way up to Series A's. And of course, we participate in some of those when we are earlier investors in a company and we have, rights to participate in the down rounds. We have a screening process. So part of our network, in multi-city network, things will get screened through our website. We have a very relatively light screening application. We're not asking for hundreds of documents and full diligence documents, but a relatively light screening that goes to the staff with Community Equity Partners that kind of vet the deal and see if it fits within the vibe of what we normally go in, especially on the club side of things. If it does, the deal will go to one of our chapters to be screened. So right here in Music City Angels, we'll probably screen anything that's healthcare related, entertainment industry related, probably some fintech related deals. I always say if it involves chemistry or physics, go to Knoxville. They're smarter than us when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? We can write a song about it, we can treat it, but when chemicals are talking and laws of physics, Knoxville, we have people out of Oak Ridge and engineering school and all that kind of stuff out there for it. So we'll bring it to a chapter with an affinity to screen it. And once that deal does a live pitch, we meet monthly. We have about 2 pitches a month that are selected to pre-screen. And if that works well and the chapter, gets sufficient soft commitments for the deal, we'll open it up to the rest of the network to go ahead and pile on some additional monies to go into that initial round. But that's typically the process that we go through. Start with the application through the website and go through the pre-screening process, get the local pitch, and then hopefully everything works well.
So what are the key sectors and themes that, the Music City Angels are finding most compelling in today's market?
Wow, today is, interesting times, of course. Healthcare, I think, is something that we are still very strong in. Fintech is something that we see a lot in, and advanced materials, are certainly things that are strong in our portfolio. A lot of things with electric vehicles, battery technology, things along those lines. Everybody's coming with their AI solutions nowadays, which, that's fine. But we're most interested in, recognizing, hey, AI is a great tool, but tell us about the problem you're solving, how you're solving it. If AI is a component of that, that's great. But, the whole AI boom right now of people come in and say, oh, we're an AI company. It's like, well, you've kind of lost interest in us. So healthcare, we still see as strong. Fintech, we see as strong. Advanced materials, we definitely see as strong. And any kind of infrastructure play, we definitely see strong.
Okay. So what differentiates the strong early stage founders from the rest in the first meeting or pitch? What are the strong ones doing that make them stand out?
Wow. Yeah. So, I think first and foremost, if they can excite the base, right? We're going to have people in there that have 1,000 other deals to look at, right? I mean, we screen hundreds of deals before we get to the one or two that are going to pitch. And the founders that really differentiate are the ones that can definitely excite the base. They're coming prepared for the pitch event. Probably we've had some of our staff or even myself that have kind of seen their preliminary pitch and coached them to say, hey, your pitch is great. This is the kind of thing that's going to resonate with our group. And this is the kind of thing that is not going to resonate with our group. And, as long as they're adhering to that, that'll improve their chances of resonating with the group. It's always annoying when you coach a founder to say, our group prefers this over this, and they seemingly didn't even listen to you for that. They're going to essentially get what they asked for out of that. Making sure that they touch all the points. You're only going to get about 15 minutes of time, and making sure you hit all the points. I mean, we treat the screening pitch as the teaser for us to want to learn more, not educate us on everything or deep dive into any individual verticals. So, what is your problem? Tell me about your team. Tell me about your solution. Tell me about the investment terms. Tell me about the exit strategy. And exit strategy is something that, unfortunately, so many founders forget to put in there or discuss. But we're definitely looking at, how are we going to get our funds back in return on this? We're angel investors. We're not in it for a lifetime of business. We might do lifetime business with you as a person, but that's because you're going to come to us with 3 or 4 or 5 companies, each with successful exits in those scenarios. So I think that's the biggest advice that we give to the founders is look at our pitch guidelines. We're happy to send them to anybody that's going to have a scheduled pitch for us. Adhere to them. Make sure you touch all the major points on that, and then we'll, be teased enough to have follow-up information afterwards.
And how does the group approach valuations? Are there any ceilings or boundaries that you stay within?
Yeah, well, first we like to see something along those lines. We know that in early stage companies, as early as we're going in, it's always tough to put evaluations on that. So, we're doing the convertible notes. We generally don't like SAFEs. We will do some SAFEs, but we're generally on convertible notes. But there's been this interesting trend we've seen in the past 3 or 4 months, all these companies coming with convertible notes or even SAFEs without valuation caps. And I'm not sure who's given them all that advice. Yeah, exactly. Right. I'm not sure who's given that advice. And when we ask them, he says, oh, well, our deal is very special. Our deal is very unique. It's highly exciting. And we're like, yeah, I'm sure it is, but we have, 300 of those right behind you that are also unique and exciting and things like that. So I'm not sure what conference they went to or something, but, making sure those deal terms are good with those valuations. So in many cases, we are pushing those firm valuations down the line, but we are very realistic in the caps on those, especially when you're coming to a SAFE or the convertible note, or especially a SAFE note, which is already, somewhat disfavored in the heartland anyway.
Okay. So what are some common red flags the Music City Angels look for when assessing startups? What gets them an instant no?
Well, term sheet. Like we talked about, you come to a term sheet with a convertible note or a SAFE without a cap. That's interesting. So, we're definitely going to look at the term sheet and make sure those terms are reasonable. We don't have the time. We have a deluge of deals that come to us, and we don't have the time to massage each individual one of these with folks. So if you're coming to us with a realistic term sheet that's, favorable with favorable terms, that's, get past one red flag. I think the coachability of the folks, like I mentioned earlier, if we're doing a coaching of them before, it's a, don't come into us and say you're going to be $1 billion company in 3 years. And then the first thing out of their mouth is we're going to be $1 billion company in 3 years, or, that kind of stuff. So coachability, when we're talking to them about the pitch and how to tailor their pitch to our particular angels to resonate, is key on that. And then not focusing towards an exit. We generally like to say, where are you going to exit? What are your exit scenarios? And how do you benchmark those exit scenarios? If you say, I'm going to sell off to Google, well, that's great. Has Google bought any companies like you? If they did, how did they value those companies? So making sure that they have thought it through on the exit scenario as to how we're going to get our returns is definitely a key flag. And if they haven't thought through a lot of that, then that's going to be a kind of a red flag that, maybe they're not marching towards an exit. They're just marching towards more of a lifestyle business.
And so how does the Music City Angels add value beyond the capital in the early stages? What do you offer them up front or ongoing?
Yeah, well, like any angel club, we have a wide variety of members from a wide variety of backgrounds. We have certainly taken advisory roles, board seats. I'm on the board of a couple of our startup companies as an independent director. So, the board seats, some connections, probably not much different than many other angel group would do, categorically speaking, of, trying to get connections, giving some advice, things along those lines.
Okay. And so what about the importance of the local ecosystems and regional networks in startup success? What's there in your area that you're working with or leveraging?
Yeah, well, right here in Tennessee, one thing that's always asked about is, the public-private Launch Tennessee partnership that can come up with some matching funds. That's, if we're able to get matching funds with our terms, with what we're putting in, that's always great. We have, some relationships, as Hall, with the state of Tennessee about how to attract companies here and things like that. So what tax incentives might be able to give companies to attract them to have their headquartered in the state of Tennessee. They don't have to be for us to invest in those, but the Entrepreneur Center can help people with crafting their pitch. And then there's a lot of other angel groups around, or venture capital groups around, that we can try to syndicate the deals with. We want our founders out there running their businesses, not raising money. We may not write the $20 million check or the $10 million check to them, but we know, some networks around, and sharing with other networks around, whether we're sharing our diligence work with them or they're showing their diligence with us, so that we're all making sure that we're not wasting a lot of duplicate time in things like diligence and things like that, when we can rely on other angel groups, or other angel groups can rely on us to help out with that and get the speed to the funding of the companies.
Well, does Tennessee have any tax breaks for the angel investor themselves, or is it just for the
No, like for the companies. I mean,
Okay.
Tennessee, as you know, we don't have a state income tax, and we used to have what we call the Hall tax, not after you, but the Hall tax that was on capital gains, which went away. So it's that mixed blessing of living in a state that has low to no income tax, right? They can't give you tax credits if you're not paying the tax. So a lot of it is business. Now we do have, some other states may have that tax credits, and some of those are brokerable. And, so we may work deals with other states on tax credits for investors that are available on a secondary market. But all in all, it's, our ecosystem here in Tennessee is largely around the attractive environment that we have companies to relocate here, as well as, like matching funds through Launch Tennessee, or, for investor funds, or I think they're still doing the SBIR matching too. I'd have to double check with them if they're still doing that too.
That's great. Well, so how does Music City Angels collaborate with other investors like venture funds and strategic partners?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some deal sharing from time to time, as far as looking at the deal pipeline, where somebody will call us, or we may call somebody else if we know it fits their investment portfolio, to say, hey, look, this is a really good deal, so that we're giving that warm referral over to them on deal sharing. That's probably most how we collaborate with some of those other groups, outside of, as I mentioned before, that if we've done diligence or they've done diligence on it, and So we don't have to, we or they don't have to repeat the grunt work on some of that kind of stuff to share maybe some of those diligence files with each other. We normally go through the entrepreneur to do that because, we want them in the middle of it.
Right. And so what's your advice for those first-time angel investors getting involved in an organized group like the Music City Angels? What do you tell them to do?
Yeah. Well, first I tell them is to get involved. Come to the pitch meetings, collaborate live with us. Many pitch meetings, as you know now, are hybrid, live, and virtual. And there's, nothing like working with these early investors to come into the live meeting and see the interactions live and things like that. So I always encourage them to come in person to these, our screening events as opposed to just virtual. In a group like ours, we cater largely to very new angel investors, people that just realized that they were an accredited investor. We only do our nature of our group is only doing the quiet solicitation deals for accredited investors only. So there's, so many people out there, as you know, that are accredited investors. They meet the definition of being an accredited investor, but they don't know anything about these deals. So come in, start asking questions, learn. I mean, I know when I got started, I'm thinking, I just need to write checks. There's nothing like having skin in the game to write those checks and start learning by having that skin in the game. So when I started, Hall, I think I had the sins of a lot of other folks to say, I'm a really bright guy, and you have to be bright and smart enough to screen out 49 out of the 50 deals, right? But that upper echelon, that upper 0.5% deal, that's tough to determine the winners from that, right? So, there's so many variables that come into play. And I think initially I was kind of deluding myself and thinking, I'm a real smart guy. I can differentiate those winners. Yeah, you're laughing, right? So
it's hard. It's hard.
You got to know to screen out the get them out of the weeds, right? And, when you work with angel groups, they normally have people or staff that screen out the 49 out of the 50 that are just not part of what you should do. But I did so many deals in the beginning where I was like, oh, that deal's crap. And then it's a 3 to 5 exit in a year. And then the other one's, oh, this is a home run. And it's just dead in 2 years. So I humbled myself and to listen to the talking heads and say, you know what? If the group's going in, go in. So come to the wisdom of the group. Even if you're only putting in $5,000 or $10,000 into, piling on with a particular group, listen to that and go along with it. That's kind of the first advice. And the second, and be clear, we're not registered investment advisors, but it's, what are your goals in doing this investing? This is a special class of investments, right? Your highest risk, highest rewards. We'll have investors that come and say, well, Charles Schwab said only invest in what you know. So, or Peter Lynch said that. And so I'm a cardiologist, so I only want to invest in cardiology devices. Well, that's fine. But, after 2 or 3 investments, you're going to start tripping over yourself, right? And aren't you already invested heavily in cardiology if you're a cardiologist? Why not diversify your brain and your portfolio into a lot of these other types of things? Same thing with people that come and say, well, I only want to invest in the companies where I can add value and I can give my time. It's like, all right, well, that's fine. But how much time do you have to give? And if you're doing 2 or 3 companies and you're doing 5 hours a week on these companies, do you have all that time to give to these folks? So, I just encourage them to think about what they're going after in this. It's their money and it's for them to do what they want to do, but, kind of think through it and then listen to people that have been, a few years down that path and to the wisdom that they bring.
Great. Well, I want to ask that question to the leader of the Band of Angels, and the response was, don't write a check in the first 90 days. So what's your take on proper diligence here? How long is it before you really have done your diligence and can know that this is a good deal or not?
Yeah. We have a saying that I hear a lot is, everybody wants to be the first, everyone wants to be the first person to write the second check. In that scenario. So yeah, diligence is key. Diligence has to be done. That doesn't necessarily say that you have to roll up your sleeves and do everything. If you're a solo angel person, yes, you're doing everything. When you're part of a group, you're crowd sharing that to either the hired staff that are helping it or other members of the group. I mean, I don't invest in anything that's life science or healthcare related because it would be a conflict with my day job at HCA, right? So, But can I help with diligence in some of those companies? Yeah, absolutely. So you get a company that involves chemistry and physics, like I mentioned. I don't know anything about that, but there are people out there that are within my network that do, right? When I go to our angel meetings, I never leave any of our meetings where I'm not a smarter person and learn something from the folks that are out there. The diverse crowd that we have, from whether it's science or business development or marketing or intellectual property, any of those types of things, I'm always learning stuff from that. And that's definitely what I embrace on that. But diligence is key, to at least have that information either done by yourself or by people within your network that you have some trust to do. Invest with your brain, not your heart. And sometimes that first area is you're investing with your heart. Gee, I really do want to help cure Alzheimer's, but is this the right business deal to do it? In that scenario, because otherwise you're putting money behind bad deals that won't come to fruition, as opposed to the good deals that would do fruition and make movement in that. I'll tell you a personal story was, I had a good colleague of mine. We had done many deals together, and he came to me with one deal. We started doing a couple deals, and they started getting a little weird. And then he came to me with one deal, and I was busy, and I just said, yeah, okay, look, here's some money to seed for it, right? Didn't think about it. Seemed okay. Trust it, even though it's a person that I've done that stuff before. Didn't do the diligence on it. And it was just, the whole thing just went horrible. So yeah, diligence is key, but that's also part of the reason to go to an angel group, is that number one, your time to do it all yourself. And then number two, you have a lot of other people with a lot of other expertise that can help.
Right. So what's your guidance for founders seeking angel investment from the Music City Angels? How should they prepare and engage with the group?
To engage with the group, like I said, we try to funnel everything through the website. If you're reaching out, I even have on my LinkedIn profile, if you submit me something via LinkedIn without going through the group, it's going to be categorically ignored, right? So, go through the screening process to get the pre-screening done. That's key. That's your path to the quickest no, right? You don't want to be sitting there for 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks or longer if the answer is going to be no right off the bat. So that's, first of all, your path to the quickest no, so you can go on and start doing what you're doing as a founder. But go through that process, put your initial deal docs of requesting on that. If you know one of our members, if you know me, if we meet somewhere and you want to reach out to me, that's fine. But I'm mostly going to put you through that process so that we can get that in there, compare it to all the other deals that are going out there and moving forward. So the biggest thing I would say is just go to the website, and I think you can put the link on there for entrepreneurs to found, and put your deal docs in there. And if we have a separate relationship, that's great. But if it's unsolicited, it's going to be ignored unless you go through the website.
Right. You have to explain to many first-time founders that angel groups get anywhere from 100 to 150 applications per month. They just don't have time to have the personal conversation with each person about how the process works.
No. And God, and I love it. And I probably do the same thing too. You go out on LinkedIn or something like that. Hey, can we have a cup of coffee? I don't like coffee. Would you mind take a look at my pitch deck? No, I don't have time, and right. There's entrepreneur centers that are out there to help you develop your pitch deck. There's a lot of other resources out there. We can't be everything to all people in those scenarios. And yeah, it is key. So if we say that, what is your exit strategy? If that's the question, go and answer the question. We have people that go online with the application, and, we ask, get your financial performance, and they don't upload anything. It's like, okay, well, you'll be categorically denied because you didn't follow some of the basic instructions. And I don't believe we're very onerous with ours. I'm sure some angel groups get extremely onerous at the pre-screening stage. We're really not very onerous at the pre-screening stage. We just want some basic information. If the deal looks good and we go to pitch and we get enough soft commitments, then we'll move to, more document gathering and diligence and things like that.
Cool. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here today, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm sure if we haven't covered that we haven't. It's been a thrilling ride. I've enjoyed it. I've been, a member of this particular group for almost since its inception, about 14 or so years ago. And it has been great, diversifying the brain as well as the portfolio, coming in, meeting fantastic people, being part of very bright conversations, always learning more. So, if you are a person out there that wants to invest in these companies, have great conversations, meet some great people, and not having to have a big upfront commitment like in a fund, and you want to join a club, just, reach out to me. You can reach out to me through the Community Equity Partners website. Sometimes on LinkedIn, I'm not good at LinkedIn. And like I said, if you're doing a pitch on LinkedIn or, for a company, it's probably going to be ignored. But find us and come out to us, and happy to have a discussion as to, what this is all about.
Great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
The Community Equity Partners website is probably the best way. Get to their staff, and if you're Nashville based, they'll probably get you connected to me. If you're connected somewhere else in Tennessee, they'll connect you to one of our other local chapters in those areas.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today. We'll include your contact details in the show notes, and we hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Hey, thank you very much, all. Have a great day.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.